it's your girl Evi Siskos, and today I have a really special guest with me. It's Nidhi Pandya, who's going to be talking to us a little bit about Ayurveda. First of all, you've been a practitioner for the past 15 years.
I've been practicing for more the last 12 years, but yeah, I've been into this my whole life.
I know a lot of people are asking themselves, what is Ayurveda? For the past 10 years, I really got into yoga, I got into meditation, and Ayurveda just kept on popping up. So what exactly is Ayurveda for those who don't know?
Exactly. And you'll hear a lot of different things, but I'm going to take you back to the basics, Evi. I'm going to tell you really what Ayurveda is. The idea of Ayurveda originated 5,000 years ago, literally. And it's Ayu is life and Veda means science. So it is the science of life. But what it really is, it basically, the goal of Ayurveda is to give you a lens, to give you a set of principles through which you can really understand the body, understand the universe, make the connection between what is it in the universe that I can consume through any of my five senses, which will either nourish me or deplete me.
I see.
But this is not possible till we can all understand our own bodies and the bio-individuality of it.
I would say in like Western custom, it's customary to go to a doctor when you have a symptom. Like let's say you have a cold, a cough, you don't feel well, something's going on with your liver, your kidneys. The first thing you do is you go to a doctor, and I know a lot of people say that instead of treating the roots, you just treat the symptoms. So Ayurveda really goes to the roots of it.
Basically, and so Evi, unfortunately, that's the only part of Ayurveda that remains mostly in the world. That's the only part people know is the part that heals. But what I find really amazing is the part that prevents. It's basically, right, how we go shopping for clothes, Evi. And then before you go, you want to know what your size is. You want to know what you're shopping for, what season you're shopping for, what occasion you're shopping for. The truth is that we should be shopping for foods like that. But the truth is, it's like today we're shopping for foods like, hey, this is supposed to be good. It's like buying a fur jacket to wear in Florida over the summer.
Right.
So what Ayurveda does is once you kind of understand what works for you and doesn't work for you, that's the starting point of health. It shouldn't be when you need to go and get fixed. Ayurveda does a fantastic job of that. It does a great job of understanding where the disease has reached and how that can be broken open and taken it into its parts and then start healing. But the part that I think people really need to know out there, and it can do really, really wonders, is basically that understanding of self.
I understand that there's 3 different types of body types. How do you do that assessment? Like, let's say for myself, how would I know which body type I am? What are the type of questions that you as an Ayurveda practitioner would ask someone like me to figure out what type of body or who I am?
Right. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that a lot of people who get into Ayurveda, they get obsessed with this body type. And while it's a great starting point, the truth is that our body type is changing all the time. Just how your hemoglobin changes, just how everything else in your body changes. There is a great chance, depending on, we're all living global lives, we're eating multi-cuisines, we're moving places. So depending on what lifestyle you're leading and what you're consuming, your body type can change. That being said, still it's a really good starting point. So I would say when you're young, when you're really, really young, when you're a baby, it's very easy to see a sharp body type. So there are basically 3 types of people, right? And they all have, and 3 types of personalities. And you can have a combination of all these 3. But basically, let's say there's one type of person who is, and we all know that, know a person who must be of that type. And that type is, you're a little bit fleshier, bigger eyes, deeper voice, thicker hair. And so that's the physical aspects of it in terms of how you feel inside. Slower digestion, can put on weight easily. The personality of such a person would be that they talk slower, they have slower nervous responses, they also like hoarding things, they like comfort zones, but they're also very nurturing.
That's even into that, even hoarding, keeping stuff, that's even part of the personality
Everything.
Of the body type. That's great. I've never heard of that.
Yes, you know why? Because so basically, for example, these people, right, Kapha, that's the Kapha personality, they're dominant in water and earth. Water likes to hold. Water is a carrier. It's a carrier for your sperms, it's a carrier for pollination, it's a carrier for your digestive enzymes. So basically, all our bodies, everything in the universe has 5 elements. And depending on the elemental domination in your body, that's what will emerge as your dosha. So the 3 doshas are Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. The Kapha dosha type is the dosha type that's dominant in water and earth.
I see that. Okay.
So you can, earth and water, they're a little bit more bulkier. They kind of are a little bit denser. And these are great people. When you go out in a group, right? So the person who has comfort zones, who's softer, who wants to go out with the same people again and again, will be your friend forever. That kind of a person.
That type?
That is one.
Kapha.
It's the kapha type of
Okay.
person. And of course, this is a very brief understanding of this. And also when they get a cold, it'll be very phlegmy. If they get sick, like much older, when they're like in their 50s, 60s, it'll probably be something related to the kidneys or cholesterol or high blood pressure, anything to do with viscosity.
You know what's so funny? You say that because when, as a kid growing up, I was like a meaty kid. I was like really chubby. By the time I reached puberty, by 11, that's when I slimmed down. But when I was 17, I got a kidney stone. Now that you're saying that it affects the kidneys, maybe it came from my childhood and it's all related. So that's really crazy.
Yeah, and Evie, I would have actually guessed that that's your body type because you have this deep voice, you have a soft face, you have this gorgeous hair. And then what happens is that the second type, the Pitta type, that's the fire type. So they're heaty. Also, what happens with the Kapha personality, when you hit puberty, all those hot hormones set in. So once the hot hormones set in, that earth and water naturally quietens down because the metabolism becomes higher.
Yeah, that's when I slimmed down. When I hit puberty, it was like all the weight just
exactly.
Like,
so all the kapha. So like imagine that whole kapha environment is this like nice moist environment in your body, and then now suddenly there's heat. So kind of that water element evaporates and makes you slimmer. So the second body type, which is the fiery type, right? I call that the fiery type. That's the Pitta type of personality. Those are people, you know them even since they're children. They have sharp features, so they have a moderate build. They know what they want, but they cannot take the sun. They may have a sharp tongue. They may experience rashes, anything to do with heat. They may have a hot digestion. And they may be really focused.
Right.
Like really, really focused. And most successful people have either a dominant or a secondary Pitta. So a secondary Pitta, meaning like, let's say you have Kapha.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, so they're intertwined. You could be like a little bit of both.
We all to live, you need all three, depending on the proportions, right? So when you're children, you see usually one dominant. As we grow older, depending on the kind of lifestyle we lead and the consumption we have, we see two dominant
and
ones.
We'll put some pictures up so like that you guys can see like what she's talking about in the babies, because I actually, when you showed that to me, I found that so interesting.
Yes, yeah. I actually love that because it really gives you an understanding. And like even if you have children, like you can see that that's the one type of child. And like if the Pitta type, the fiery type, right? Like when they get sick, it's either a viral. It's not going to be like that runny nose because it's all hot. So virals are really hot. Or it'll be a diaper rash. It could be a stomach bug thing. So even everything kind of adds up.
Right.
When they get hormonal, when they're like 16 and 17, these are the kids that you want to be careful that they don't break out very quickly because of that excess heat in their body. By knowing the constitution, what you can do is make those choices. Like I have two daughters, right? My younger one is the Pitta type of daughter. And with her, I'm already making choices where I'm like, I know she needs cooler foods. When I go to a hot place, I'm giving her more coconut water to cool her down.
And your other daughter, what is she?
That's what we're going to get to. That's the third type. That's the Vata type. Now, Vata is the windy type of child or the windy type of personality. And the reason why I keep going back to children is because it's much easier to see these doshas in children, much more clearly when they're not so combined. So with this type of person, right, they're like growing up, they're like hyperactive. They're all over the world is a wondrous place to them. But they can also be a little uneasy, a little too mobile. A lot of kids with ADHD and ADD,
that's what it is.
They basically have a dysfunction of Vata. I actually wrote this article, which got a lot of press, was that it's actually a Vata imbalance because your nervous system, your nervous impulses, they'll also be dry. They'll have dry skin, they'll have dry hair, they won't sleep really well. They'll just seem uneasy because they don't know what they want. And that is all that wind in their system.
Right. It's funny that you say that because I've always felt like we're living in the United States where a lot of people are medicated when they come to, when it comes to their children and ADHD, the first thing they do is go straight to the doctor. My kid is hyperactive. And I've heard this, I've actually heard moms that say I have to take my kid to the doctor and prescribe them something because they are so hyperactive and I've always felt this like internally. I'm like, there has to be something that either you're feeding your child that's not right, or maybe the environment. I really believe in energy and either the environment at home is what also is causing the child to be hyperactive. So it's so interesting that you said this and actually wrote an article on it.
Right. And Evie, that's very well said, right? So once you understand that and you understand that dysfunction is excess wind, then you can make an active effort to do everything grounding, whether it's oil massages, whether it's grounding music, whether it's giving your children darker colors, right? Things like that. Or even yourself.
Right.
Like once a person identifies that, hey, I have this anxiety, I have lack of sleep, I have bloating. Like these are the three things that kind of really go well together with this third type of constitution
Right.
is anxiety, lack of, some sleeplessness and a lot of bloating. And sometimes you may have another dominant dosha, but if you're leaning towards Vata, this third type, then you might start seeing these changes in your body. And then if you are, you just got to watch out for what are you eating that's making you like that. So the whole other part of this field of Ayurveda is looking at everything around you and trying to understand what is their elemental dominance.
I see.
Right? So if you're eating something spicy, you know that's fire. You're eating protein and something heavy, which almost looks like the earth too.
Now, what is your take on, like these days, a lot of people are talking on veganism and like, becoming vegan. What is Ayurveda's take on that? Because I know that there's so much going on, like there's this diet. First, a few years it was the Atkins diet. Now there's keto. There's all these different types of diet. How can you listen to Ayurveda or put that into practice with so many diets out there?
So, Ayurveda is not to be confused with yoga, which I think happens. And it can integrate really beautifully as well. But in terms of the Ayurvedic thinking, is solely for your body, right? And it does recognize that your body is a tool for spiritual practices. But if you're not following the path of spiritual practice, yes, meat is a big part of Ayurveda. And depending on who you need, who needs it. Right. So, coming back to veganism, right? Or for example, a keto diet or anything else, right? The first thing we need to do is identify what are the elements that are dominant in that diet. Right? Not everybody needs those elements. And let's say you need them, but there is going to be a point when you've had enough of them in your body. So let me give you an example. Like the vegan diet, it's raw. It's basically low in fats, right? And it's a very dry diet. Now, let's say you're already dry, right? Like the best thing I can compare this to is like, let's say you're already like Arizona, right? Inside, right? Because that's what I actually compare bodies inside like to cities. Climates, right? And let's say you are like Arizona, and then you keep consuming dry and more.
Oh, then you're just like,
you're going to become arid.
Fire, in there.
And you're going to be arid. And your nerves, which have that soft myelin sheath, which keep it so protected, are not going to dry out. And you're not going to get good sleep because there's no cushion. Your digestive juices are going to dry out and you're going to get bloated. Your joints are going to start cracking. And I see this with my vegan clients all the time. Really? Because they lose the synovial fluids, that good fat that supports all of these functions. Right. Now you don't have them. At the same time, let's say you have too much water in your system and there's somebody who's just sweating all the time and is so clammy and has high blood pressure and has high cholesterol.
So that's an excess of moisture.
Excessive moisture. Now, when those people go vegan for some amount of time, they experience amazing changes. What they don't understand is that these are not going to last forever. Right. So then what you hear is like, oh my God, I went vegan and I felt so good for 3 years. Because now you were balancing that whole monsoon season. You were moving from that whole monsoon rainy season to something that was more moderate. But when you go on the other side, when you become so dry, now you're going to go from being like this whole tropical place to being Arizona, and that's not where you want to be.
Which is actually, I know a lot of people there's like this thing going on online, it's called vegan face. That after a few years of being vegan, these people report that they had such a great, the first couple of years they were great. And then after a while, they started getting vegan face, which they started aging. Their face is sunken.
The collagen.
That is so, I've never, now hearing from the Ayurveda perspective, it makes sense how someone who has been vegan for so long, at first it was like working for them, and then they started aging and, it started producing the complete opposite effect. So they went from one spectrum to the other.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That is so interesting.
And, Evi, that being said, it does not, for somebody, like for some people, it can work for 2-3 years, but there are others that it may not work at all. Like somebody like me, if I went vegan, I would have dry skin and dry hair and I would be this electrocuted mess, like because I'm already on the drier side. Right. So if I went dry, in a couple of weeks, you'll see everybody around me run away from me because I'm going to be this crazy, agitated person because now everything is dry in my body and that wind will it can drive you crazy.
Now, talking about wind and you're saying driving you crazy, I just had a baby 4 months ago. And I know a lot of women, after having a child, so many people have told me how are you doing so well? a lot of women do go through postpartum depression and the changes that happen to your body. Not a lot of women can, they call it the bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it that happens when a woman gives birth, and how can Ayurveda help in bringing back and restoring the body to what it was? Because a lot of changes happen to a woman.
So, in Ayurveda, and I've experienced this myself with two children, what happens, right? Giving birth is an opportunity to create something new in your body if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
So, when a woman gives birth, she actually has the opportunity to be born again herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this: when you're emptying something from your house, now you can get new furniture in.
Right.
So, just to go a little bit deeper into that, what's happening, Evi, is when you're basically essentially giving birth, the elements of earth and water, right? A lot of tissue and fluids come out of your
Mm-hmm.
body. And in a human body, that's the best thing to have is tissue and fluids. But now there's this whole gap created, ether. And anywhere there is gap, wind is going to enter. Also, you have new orifices empty, opened up, right? Like you basically give birth and your whole birthing canal is now exposed to the environment outside. So there's wind that can get trapped inside.
It's so funny because so many cultures, I know in Spanish cultures, they keep 40 days after giving birth. And a lot of people say you need to be careful during the 40 days because air can literally
enter.
I've heard this from so many moms, grandmothers,
yes.
Air can go in. And I was always like, what do you mean
air can go in?
Like, what does that mean?
Now that's exactly what happens is that wind can go in. So 40 days is basically what it takes for your body to press that reset button and create the new tissue that you need. But if you do it right, so if you don't do it right, what that wind is going to go, it's going to get in. And it's going, because now you have space inside, right? Wherever there is space, there's going to be wind entering that like a tunnel. It's going to go into your joints. People get rheumatoid arthritis, people get all kinds of joint pains.
Okay.
It's going to go into your brain and your nervous system, and now you're going to get postpartum depression because wind is like this constant thinking, oh my God, this is going to happen. Oh, that's going to happen. My life is so bad.
Right.
That's going to happen. Now, when you prevent that wind and then you support yourself with nourishing earth and water foods, like in Ayurveda, you have a lot of nourishing whole grains for people who eat meat, bone broths, a lot of lentils, all spiced with good spices so they can be absorbed really well by your body. What that does, it kind of keeps the wind centered, produces new tissue, which will now fill in those gaps nicely and nourish the baby, nourish your breast milk. And the journey is amazing. Like, I actually do feel, Evi, that I was born again each time I had a baby. It was a great opportunity for me to restore and reset anything that was not working for me in my body.
Right. Now, how do you do a proper Ayurveda assessment? Like, what do you do in an assessment?
Yeah. So a lot of people do it differently. A lot of people will look at your pulse, and then they'll be able to spot the elemental dominances as well as where they are in your body. So they'll be able to say that your gut is really hot, but your skin is really dry.
So from the pulse, I've always been told I have low blood pressure and I have a really slow pulse. So what is that?
That's usually a kapha pulse. That's the one that we talked about, like a slower pulse, right? So that's a slower pulse because kaphas have a good amount of, like, their nervous system is very well protected. So things happen slowly, but they grasp longer. Long-term memory is great. So, and there's a lot of other things that can happen in your digestion and system as well with the pulse. But that's not how I do my assessments. Evi, with me, I try and understand everything from your sleep to your history to your genetic patterns to whether you feel hot or cold to what your temperament is. And in every question that I ask you, what I'll try and do is I will spot an elemental dominance. And I'll say, okay, this is earth. Okay, if this person stays up late, okay, cannot get sleep, it's wind. This person likes comfort zones, earth. And then every question and basically everything about your life. And you see how...
I'm a morning person. Like super morning person, and by nighttime I'm like dead. Yeah, I'm such a morning person. So
usually kaphas are not morning person. It can either be a cultural thing or it's that secondary fire that you have that wakes you up in the morning.
I see.
So, but then once I've asked all the questions, it's like this. I feel like through the second half of my assessment, I'm predicting what the answers would be, because I already know, right? Like once you start seeing what's happening in the body, Evi, it's amazing because what I tell people is, right, like you learn to demystify your body. Today, we are also scared around health because we don't know what's happening inside. We hear all these crazy terms and microbiome and this hormone and this neurotransmitter. I was just like, what's going
It's like, so
on?
it is. It's a lot. It's overwhelming.
It's like going to a hardware store for me, you know, like opening a
Right,
computer,
right.
right? But it's like, once you know Ayurveda, you're like, oh my God, like I got this, you know?
Right.
So that's the assessment. But Evie, I really work with people for them to understand their own bodies. A lot of practitioners will go wider and tell you what to do, but I feel like it's not fun unless it becomes a prescription, unless you can demystify your own body and understand
Right.
what lives inside.
And that's really becoming a master of yourself, of your own body, getting to know yourself, which I think is so important because, like I said before, so many people, the second that they have a symptom, they go straight to the doctor and put their hands in the doctor. And the doctor, I feel sometimes, I'm like, doesn't even really know what's going on. It's like, oh, okay, you have a cold. Like I've literally known people who had a cold and then and the doctor was like, oh, you just have a cold, gave them some prescription. And a month later, it turns out to be pneumonia or like bronchitis or something that they couldn't see where it was coming from. So it's
Right,
so important to know yourself and be
right.
able to, treat your own symptoms.
Right, right. And it's amazing that you say that because the way the whole medical system works, Evie, is if anybody's ever done coding or has looked at, those snap circuits, everything needs to be right for it to function.
Right.
But what you can do is if one circuit goes wrong, you can fix that temporarily and see, oh, now it's lighting up again. But your whole machinery won't be working the same. So, like the whole system today, the medical system is looking at circuits individually. But unless you can see the whole machinery, for what it is, all its parts, and make that seamless, it's not going to work really well.
Right, right.
And that's
Which
what
is
Ayurveda
so
does.
important.
Yeah.
Well, Nidhi, thank you so much
No,
for all this
anytime,
information.
Ellie.
Seriously, like you learn so much, like I said, Ayurveda, it's a modality that a lot of people don't know about that I feel like they
Mm-hmm.
should know about because it's an ancient science that has been around for 5,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And how can someone come to you with what is the best way to reach you?
So the best way to see my work is through my Instagram, which is my _ Ayurvedic life. It'll be posted below because it's a little complicated, especially if you're not familiar with Ayurveda. So I think that's the best way to kind of understand my work. And you don't really need to know Ayurveda or know anything about Ayurveda to even kind of get on my page because that itself will give you a sense. And that is the best way to reach me, or my website, which is nidhipandya.com.
Okay.
One
Well,
of the
thank
two.
you so much,
Thank you,
Nidhi. And
Ellie.
guys, there you have it, Nidhi Pandya. Here talking a little bit about Ayurveda, and if you guys are interested, just head over to her page and she'll be able to assess you and also teach you about the science of Ayurveda. Thank you so much, guys. Stay tuned for more.